So here's the deal. The quote that we're playing with today is still a quote by Daniel Reardon. The quote is, "In the long run, the pessimist may prove right." Uh, let's see. Sorry, I've got to turn off alerts because I'm getting distracted. In the long run, the pessimist may be proved right, but the optimist has a better time on the trip. Since we do not have the benefit of Be Live to bring up the audio, I'm going to drop this into one of the quotes, into one of the comments. Again, Daniel Reardon, in the long run, the pessimist may prove to be right, but the optimist has a better time on the trip. Kind of love this one. I sort of feel like Daniel Reardon could have written this one for me. The the culture in which I was raised has that healthy dose of pessimism baked in, right? So I have an almost knee-jerk agreement with Reardon's prediction about the pessimist being proven right in the end, but that bit about the optimist is so damned accurate. We optimists do have a much better trip along the way. You know, the pessimist expends so much energy planning for the negative outcomes. There's precious little energy left, let alone any time spent on planning for a positive outcome. Not only that, but most of the attention along the trip goes for looking for all the negative stuff that was planned for, watching out for all the catastrophes you knew were going to happen. The pessimist has no ability to see when something happens, right? Especially when something positive happens. They miss the opportunity. It's like getting lost on a road trip in the middle of America and then happening upon these largest ball of twine. It's out there on Route 66, the world's largest frying pan, or any of these sites that you never would have seen if you hadn't gotten lost out in the middle of middle America, right? The pessimist would just be plowing right past that. Kind of sad. So over the last several years, one of my favorite questions has become, what if it all goes right? And I think that's the question that we miss the opportunity to play with. What if it all goes right? What if we have that opportunity to have or create not only exactly what we want, but something even better that we didn't know was possible? So there's so many times that I have shared the story of finding coaching in the first place. And the part of the story that I don't share a lot is I had been in Vistage for, I don't know, I was in Vistage by the end for 15 years. And for those of you who don't know what it is, here's a link to Vistage in the chat. So I had been a member of Vistage for a number of years, and my chair, the guy who ran our group, Vistage is a international group designed to improve the life of the chief executive. The outcomes are supposed to be, in the way I describe it, creating better leaders, making better decisions, and getting better results. That's the idea behind Vistage. Now, the ideal Vistage chair is supposed to be a mix of coach, consultant, mentor, and thinking partner. And I wanted, if I was going to be a Vistage chair, to actually be trained as a coach. So I went to coach training. Now, I had been living with my wife who'd been in coach training for a year, and I've been watching what was happening to her. And so I was drawn to the coach training anyway. This was a lot earlier than I had planned on going through coach training. In the meantime, I had also started looking at the whole process of starting a Vistage practice. I had talked to San Diego, to their corporate office, and was starting to get an idea of what it would take in terms of time, effort, and energy to build and run the number of Vistage practices or Vistage groups that it would take to hit the revenue targets that I had for me. Now, what I had begun to realize is the amount of time it takes to run those groups was not going to leave me, particularly for the first 3 years of building the practice, really much time for the deep work that I wanted to do with folk. Even if I didn't have a clear concept of what coaching entailed yet from the delivery end, I knew from the receiving end. And I knew that I wanted more time for that deeper work. And we had 4 or 5 different aspiring Vistage chairs visit our group. And that was a great way for them to experience what it was like to run a group. And our chair was one in the top 10% system-wide. 4 out of those 5 or 3 out of those 4 aspiring Vistage chairs were never able to successfully launch a practice. So my pessimist was in full bloom. Not only do you really not want to do it, David, you probably can't do it, because look at my pessimist was collecting evidence for why I was going to fail at launching a Vistage practice. I went to coach training anyway. And much like Elaine's experience, first break on Friday was like, the choir sang, I found it. And coaching was the ideal structure and language and format and scaffolding to go with what my seemingly coach approach had been like for consulting all the way along. So that was a natural mix, and I leaned in fully. But had I walked in there with pessimist in full bloom, saying, no, this will never work, you're doomed, you'll never make it, I never would have seen the connection. I never would have been open to the possibility that coaching provided. I never would have been able to be touched by that learning experience in the way that I was. And where I am today, 11, 12 years later, would not have been the case. So on one hand, I get the idea of the benefit of playing devil's advocate and having that pessimistic edge to look at things and even plan for what could possibly go wrong. The optimist has a much better time. And I think that's an important thing. There's something to be said for enjoying your path. No, it's not going to be, rose petals laid before you by little flower girls for the rest of your life. Then again, the optimist always finds something beautiful and something special in the experience. Always. The pessimist looks for negative outcomes to be prepared, not just because the pessimist expects it, because the best way to deal with something is to have some plan or planning around how to navigate it. So there is a value. And the optimist is able to be present. The optimist is able to make something positive out of anything that comes up. The optimist has a much better time on the trip. So I'll always choose to be an optimist. There was a story that my wife tells all the time about when she was a little bit sitting at the dinner table and somebody referred to her middle brother Kenneth as an optimist. Elaine said, I want to be an octopus too. So yes, I want to be an octopus. I want to go through life looking for the positive and able to see the positive when it bubbles up. I want to see the synchronicities. I want to see the happenstance. I want to enjoy the things we come upon that we never would have and find the joy in it. And I hope that you do too. It's not that I want you to be Pollyanna and look at the world through rose-colored glasses and never think about what could possibly go wrong. I'd love for you to be prepared. And yet I want for that pessimistic view, that catastrophizing forward, not to be your primary. It's a necessary evil to think towards the future and plan for the potential negative outcomes, with the optimist to take the driver's seat. It's a much better trip. So again, that question that I play with that I really have grown to love, what happens? What if it all goes right? So between now and next Monday, 2 things. One, I will figure out what the sound problem is with BeLive so that next week the broadcast works properly. And second thing, between now and next Monday, what mindset will you choose?